Hi, welcome back to 23 Days of Astrology with Marjorie. Today is day 11, and we are going to talk about the moon through the houses. Now, a note on these videos is that I decided or realized a little way through that creating and posting them daily is not great for my nervous system. So I've slowed down a bit intentionally, and I'm going to move at a little bit more of a lunar pace, but there will still be 23. And this is the first of a 4-part series on the moon where we will look at the moon through the houses. Now, before we do that, there's a little bit of housekeeping, which just touches on, the overview of what we'll be talking about. So the moon in the birth chart. I'm a certified Hellenistic or ancient astrologer. And in that tradition, when we look at the moon in the birth chart, we're really looking at the circumstances or the setting of the life. If the sun represents the plot in the chart, the moon would represent, where is this plot going to unfold? Where can we expect to see the setting of this person's life? And how is that going to show up? Now, in modern astrology, the moon is usually referred to as representing or symbolic of an individual's emotions or their needs. And in my research and experience and practice, I do find that the circumstance and setting, as well as emotions and needs, shine through the symbolism of the moon. So we'll kind of encapsulate both of them as we move forward. One thing to mention is that the moon is at home in the sign of Cancer. So as we move through and we see some chart examples with the moon in specific houses, we'll remember that when planets are in certain places in the chart, especially their home signs, they are empowered. When they are in other places in the chart, they could either be challenged, which would invite opportunities for growth, or they could be in positions where they're looking to other planets for support. So that is really all we need to know right now. And then just a quick view and reminder of note on planets in signs. So every planet has a home or a place where it likes to be. And I'm a visual person, so I just threw this in here, the planets and the home signs on the side. This is really just to remind us that when a planet is in its home sign, it is resourced, and the topics of that place will be resourced in the life. And when it's not at home, think it's like on vacation, we can connect the topics of where the planet is to the topics of the planet's home. And it's kind of like a recipe, like adding spices, or sometimes I like to think of it as a math problem and finding the sum. So this is just for informational purposes, as we move in. Okay, so the moon in the first house. Now, this is a mystery example that we will touch on, but let's just ignore the fact that it's a Libra rising, and let's talk about what does it mean to have a moon in the first house in a birth chart. So right away, we know that that the first house represents the topics of self, identity, character, health and body, temperament, and vitality. These are all under the jurisdiction of the first house in a birth chart. So when we think about a moon being in this part of the chart, we're able to know that, okay, the environment or the setting of this person's life is going to really unfold within that person. Wherever this person goes, their environment goes with them. And a good way to put this in perspective is to think about the 10th house. The 10th house is the place that deals with career and reputation and this like visible piece of us in the world. If your moon's in the 10th house, you can like maybe leave work at work. If there's work struggles and your moon is there and that's the environment where a lot of your lessons are unfolding, you can maybe leave that at work and then go home and retreat and be away from it. But when the moon is in the part of the chart that deals with you, your identity, and who you are, you can't leave that anywhere. You're always taking it with you, which is a beautiful challenge. So, for people with the moon in the first house, I often say that mental and physical well being are really top priority, because when we tend to the inner landscape, when we tend to, the choppy waters of our brain, and when we tend to our physical health and eat things that are going to nourish us and make us feel strong and be able to show up in a certain way, we only benefit from that. So, people with the moon in the first house are always encouraged to really focus on physical and mental well being. Excuse me. And the other thing about a moon in the first house that I think is incredibly beautiful is that, in my experience, people with the moon in the first house tend to be reflective, good listeners. They can share insights at just the right time and deliver them in a way that may land better than other people have tried to deliver the same information. Now, the symbolism is rooted in the moon, the relationship between the moon and the sun. So the moon doesn't have any light of her own. She reflects the light of the sun. So if we think about a person reflecting, a person carrying this lunar archetype within them, within their sense of self, we can see that they would be a reflective person, possibly a nurturing person, able to hold space for who's sitting across from them, and able to offer insights, or able to know when to offer insights and to know when to listen. So that is a little bit of information about the moon in the first place. Now, of course, the sign, we have a Libra rising here, the sign that we find and any other planets that are in this first house are going to flavor this and add so many layers to the interpretation, which I'm not even going to get into today because that's not what I'm trying to do here. But we should always keep that in the back of our mind. You can't really say, what something means in a silo, because there's always so much more to the story. There's always so much context to take in. However, you have to start somewhere, and you have to just be able to pluck out a piece of a chart and talk about it and understand it before you can loop in the other layers, like this moon, Pluto, Saturn relationship. I really can't dig into that until I have the foundation of what does it mean to have a moon in the first house. Then we can layer in, what does it mean to be conjunct Pluto? And then what does it mean to have Saturn there with the ascendant too in the sign of Libra? So all of these things are important layers of the story, but the first piece of it is understanding the moon in the first house. Our second example is going to talk about the moon in the second house. So we know that the second house is a place that deals with resources, both financial and internal. This is a place that deals with possessions and assets, and also self-worth, those inner assets that we learn to cultivate. So somebody with a moon in the second house may be here to, or their setting of their life may involve cultivating resources. Maybe it's, always planning ahead for financial planning and working hard to earn, working hard to gather resources. It may also show up as inner development, really working hard to cultivate the inner landscape that when we feel we've tended to, we feel rich and wealthy. So, of course, the sign and whatever planets are with this are going to flavor this, but that is the baseline of what it may mean to have a moon in the second house. And lastly, the moon in the third house would deal with the topics of the third house. There's a lot of topics that are associated with the third house. Some of them include local dealings. By that I mean like your neighborhood, like hopping in the car and running to the library or walking to the corner store or being curious about what's happening in your community. That's what I mean when I say local dealings. This is also a place that deals with the rhythms of daily life. So if the moon is speaking to the settings of life, and the third house is speaking to like the rhythms of your daily life and how that might look, there is a lot of focus on what might happen on a daily basis. Is this an empowered moon here may speak to like ritual or an appreciation for ritualistic practices, a dedication to working out or dedication to meditation or something along those lines. If the moon is empowered or in its joy here, which actually we do find the moon in the third house to be what ancient astrologers refer to as in her joy. They also refer to this part of the chart as goddess. So this particular chart gives me the feeling of somebody who may have a special relationship with goddesses, may have the ability to, or the interest to have a daily practice of sitting and meditating and inviting a goddess in on a practice like that. This is also a place that deals with technology, writing, storytelling, like quick moving journalism, news that comes fast. Also early schooling, siblings, and like extended family. So there's so much in this part of the chart. And this particular example has a lot of things in that part of the chart too. So there's a lot of busyness in this situation. Now, the moon isn't always clustered in the sign of Sagittarius. There could be many other ways that this could show up. Now, if this was a moon just on its own, with no other planets, this could speak to somebody who finds joy from like zipping around and running errands or running into people in their local community, driving places, writing blog posts, sharing stories electronically in a quick manner. All of these things could fall under the situation of a moon being in the third house. Of course, it is flavored by the sign and whatever planets are there. But this is just to give you a little bit of a taste of what it might mean to see a moon in the third house. Now, our next video will deal with similar examples, but we'll look at houses 4, 5, and 6 and see what it means to have a moon in those houses in a birth chart. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you soon.